For my talking point for this show, it's going to be Ric Flair. A lot of the stuff that we've seen of his on the pod hasn't necessarily been as fantastic and as great as the legend of Ric Flair as sort of would lead you to believe that it has been. This show, however, this was the Ric Flair that I've heard about. This was the Ric Flair that seems to have had all that legend. At least that's how it felt to me anyway. This match, that Flair had versus Randy Savage.
The WWF Championship match, Ric Flair defending against the Macho Man Randy Savage, is a match that goes for 25 minutes just over, and it ends when basically Savage schoolboys Ric Flair and then holds the trunks, pulls him up and wins the match. And there's a bit of afterwards when Elizabeth is confronted by Ric Flair and she slaps Flair about a bit. Savage then attacks Flair. Savage is then attacked by Flair and Perfect. Officials come down, separate them all, and Savage and Elizabeth celebrate with the title after the match.
This was the Ric Flair that I've heard about, or I don't want to say that, that he carried him, because, he damn well didn't. I mean, Randy Savage was absolutely epic in this as well, but specifically looking at Ric Flair, he was great in this. All his trademark moves, like his chops, which, they looked and felt more realistic than normal. He was doing things that, I haven't seen him do, at least, throughout a lot of these pods. His standing vertical suplex, which the strength on him, the fact that he was able to hold Savage up, and Savage is a big dude. He had him held up in the air for quite a while on a delayed suplex, which was quite incredible for him to be able to pull off. So I thought that was great. Flair bled in the match as well, so it was his sort of trademark, the blood on the white hair, which always looks, I gotta be honest, is a hell of a visual. He was perfect. He was absolutely fantastic in this match. Like little things, the right hands that he threw felt like really tough, hard punches, and that he threw them with mad intention as well. So the finish, I thought was great. Flair absolutely went batshit afterwards. Kissed Liz, which was a big no-no. Liz went nuts. Savage went after him, but this whole thing felt extremely personal. And like I said, specifically focusing on Flair's performance, I just felt that this was the Ric Flair, and his promos throughout the show as well were also great, pre and post the match. This was the guy that I've heard so much about. And do you know what? This was absolutely fantastic. I loved this. Props to both guys.
So, yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with Matt. I think this is obviously Flair rightfully gets plaudits for his performance in the 92 Rumble, but I think this is equally as strong. In terms of the actual match, it starts off so intense. Macho Man sprints down to the ring, absolutely just canes it down to the ring. It's personal. He wants Ric Flair, wants to beat him up. And what I really liked about it was, like you said, the intensity at the beginning, all the impacts of the moves. But what I seem to remember from this match, the main thing that I can remember from watching it when I was younger was the fact that Macho Man is selling his leg for so long. In fact, if Macho Man was still alive, he'd still be selling his leg now, because at the end of the match, he's selling it. But you said just then, Tinky, that this match was over 25 minutes long. Well, baste my onions, because I did not think that it was that long at all. That was how much I enjoyed it. There was no way it seemed like a 25-minute match. They keep the intensity up for the whole match. The biggest learning point I think I've had on this entire podcast is Ric Flair's delayed vertical suplex. Because I seem to remember the first time we saw it on whatever show it was we recorded, I was like, that's weird. I've never seen him do that before. And he actually does it all the time, which is quite funny. Macho Man is amazing in it. Mr. Perfect on the outside's brilliant. Bobby Heenan's commentary is absolutely amazing as well, because he's hysterical at points. Doesn't even try. There's no even an attempt to hide his bias or anything like that. He's absolutely magnificent in it. He does go on a little bit about the pictures. So the storyline going into this, that's Ric Flair has allegedly got some kind of nudie pics of Elizabeth, and he's going to put them on the big screen in the Hoosier Dome when he wins the match. And he goes on for a little bit about it, does Bobby Heenan, a little bit too much for my liking, but it's still heel stuff, so it's supposed to be a bit grating, isn't it? The match in itself is great. Like you said, Matt, the visual, the blood is absolutely outstanding. It's just phenomenal. When Miss Elizabeth comes down, the pop is outrageous. Did you notice Shane McMahon was one of the people down there trying to stop her from coming out, which is quite good to see. It's the only time I've ever seen Shane McMahon come down on the WWE ring in the last 10 years and not wanted to vomit blood. So that was something. The elbow drop that Macho Man hits Ric Flair with is amazing. And what I think they do quite well is that at the time that the match ends, Macho Man has got the match won. Ric Flair comes in, pulls the referee out, doesn't get sent out the back for some reason, so we didn't get to see the amazing Earl Hebner, "You're out of here" thing. But it meant that there was still all the cards, everything was stacked against Macho Man, which is why I don't mind him pulling the tights, because it's like an equalizer. He does pull the tights of Ric Flair to get the win. It gives the heels a chance to feel like hard done by, and quite justifiably so, and allow the feud to carry on. The promo afterwards I thought was brilliant, because Bobby Heenan and Mr. Perfect are going absolutely bonkers, bananas, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. But Ric Flair's calm and calculated. He's the veteran in this situation. He's like, no, we don't. We go again. You know what I mean? We recalibrate. I think he says about 15 times, and then we go again. And I just thought it was really good. And overall, I thought this is a much better match than I remember it being, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So I wasn't as high on it as you two. I thought it was very good, but I just didn't. I wouldn't go as far as to call it great. It was a very good match. There's just something about Flair's run in WWF that I feel it feels a little bit. I'm gonna kind of refer back to SummerSlam '92. The match at SummerSlam '92, which Flair wasn't in the match, but it was Savage versus the Warrior. And in that match, kind of one of the selling points is that it's going to be revealed that Perfect is in somebody's corner, and it never happens because they're in neither corner, and it's just all a ruse. But it's a bit stupid. It's a bit silly. Here, one of the big selling points is Flair and Perfect are going to reveal this picture of Elizabeth, a centerfold style picture of Elizabeth, that's going to reveal her to be less than this innocent person that she's been she's been portrayed as, and nothing comes of it. You don't get anything. They don't even attempt to reveal a picture, and it feels like I've seen a little bit of Flair stuff before Jim Crockett went really kind of national when it was still called Mid-Atlantic, and it feels quite similar to a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of non-delivery of kind of key selling points of stories, and I'm just like, I find it really, really unsatisfying, and the matches don't make up for it for me. They just don't do enough to make up for it. And that was on my mind throughout this. I was like, when are we going to get to the picture? When is that thing? When is it going to be exposed that that's not true, that they haven't got anything, or that what they've got is something that's clearly fake or whatever? And they just never get to it. They just never get to resolving that little angle behind of it all. And I think had they done that, and had they come out and shown this picture, even if it was obviously a fake, then I could have bought more into Savage's anger. But the way I felt about it was like Savage should just be like, well, what have you got? We know she hasn't done anything, so what have you got? Where's your evidence? And it just didn't do it, and I just found that very, very unsatisfying. The match is definitely good, but that really took away from it for me.
No, I get where you're coming from in terms of the picture, and I mean, but perhaps I'm the benefit of kind of knowing what happens didn't really bother me as such, because I didn't know exactly what happened, but I was thinking, if there was a picture, I probably would have seen it by now. So I was assuming that there wasn't. So I didn't really care all that much about that. So yeah, for me, I was just a little background thing. I was like, whatever. Didn't really mind.
And we know historically that stuff doesn't interest you as much anyway. The story aspects are not as big a deal to you as they are to me, and so that's fair enough. But for me, that's just such a key part of this, and it's a key part because, as you said, Matt, they're really trying to sell the personal nature of this, and I just wasn't buying it. I was like, well, why is it so personal? Flair says he's got this picture and he's going to reveal it, and he hasn't. So where's your problem?
Well, there are pictures, because I've seen them, of like Flair and Elizabeth hanging out by a pool and stuff like that. I can't remember at what point they were published or shown, but I've definitely seen. In fact, I've just found them on the internet. So it's like a picture of like Miss Elizabeth in a swimming costume sat by a pool with Ric Flair with an awful shirt on, might I add. There's a couple of other ones of them like having dinner, like a candlelit dinner. It doesn't get resolved at this show.
Exactly, and he's still selling the idea that he's really angry, and they say they're going to reveal it. So regardless of whether they did eventually then bring these pictures out later on, that doesn't explain the anger in this match, and it doesn't explain the fact that they've said they're going to reveal it. It's just really, I don't like that. I just think that's really poor. If you're saying that we're going to reveal these pictures of WrestleMania, then do it, or be exposed for not being able to do it.
Can we talk about the leg selling? I know I've mentioned it already, but what are your thoughts on the leg selling? Because it is tremendous. It is amazing how after the match he can't stand, can he, Macho Man? He's leaning on the ropes. He can not put any weight on it. It's just, it's wonderful. Which is why Macho Man's leg is my MVP.
Yeah, I thought his selling was really good. And don't get me wrong, I think the technical aspects of the match are very good. Maybe not amazing. I still struggle with Flair a lot because I still think his style is so samey. It's just the same thing again and again and again. But it was a really good match. That bit of it really took it away from me.
There was a point that I had a real flashback to my 1992 days and being like, who's this guy? Like, 'cause I think I watched like some stuff before he joined, and then he joined, and I was like, who's this guy? And why is he? Who's this little guy who says world champion, who's nowhere near as big as anyone else? All of a sudden, the champion. It was like, well, I remember having. I think you told me, Tinky, in like when would it have been, like 2005, 2006, whatever, when you were like, the Bradshaw's the champion. And I was like, what? The guy from the Acolytes? He's the champion. The guy, Justin Hawk Bradshaw's the WWF champion. It's the same kind of feeling of bemusement when all of a sudden I looked and I was like, but Ric Flair can't be WWF champion. He's tiny compared to Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
And he looks old. And he looks like an old man. An old, decrepit, small man has managed to be the world champion over Hogan and Undertaker and Warrior and all these other people.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I can remember at the time just being so confused. And I could also be like, why Mr. Perfect Wrestling? Why is he walking around all the time? Like, I can remember being really confused by that.
But one thing I wanted to note as well was the post-match promo between the Flair had and Savage had. The only thing for me is I kind of felt they were a bit night and day. I felt Flair's promo was amazing. Savage's was a little bit. I think a lot of Savage's promos I'm used to being quite short, and this one was a little bit longer. So like, I don't know, like the way he speaks and his delivery, just for a lengthy period of time, it just sounds odd and strange to me. And it's just like, why is this man talking in a weird voice for? Whereas if he does it quite short, it doesn't feel that way. So he was going on for a bit, and I was like, yes, you've just lost me, mate. With this with Flair, I was hanging on every word. So I definitely felt they were different.
The other thing that I found difficult about this was that Savage and Elizabeth element, because they were basically breaking up at this point in time. I think they divorced this year, so they may already have split as far as I know. And I may be just reading into something that wasn't there, but that really felt like an element here, especially with Savage's promo. Their interaction in the ring after the match just didn't feel as natural and as organic and as realistic as it perhaps had in the past. It felt a little bit more like they just weren't quite so comfortable in the situation they were portraying, this couple that were still married and still happily together.
Well, there's the bit where Ric Flair kisses her and she starts slapping him away, and then Macho Man runs out of the corner and like pushes her out of the way. Like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't look particularly like heroic. Yeah, it looks a bit weird. Yeah,
it just felt awkward. Like, and the same was the same with that promo afterwards. It just felt like, if I'm honest, it felt like Savage was being honourable because he gives her the title and says, this is yours, and all this sort of stuff, but doing it in a way that was the way someone would react when they had broken up, and trying to explicitly show that he wasn't bitter and he was trying to be a good guy rather than
friends.
rather than because it was his wife and he loved her. That's what it felt like. And again, that kind of maybe coloured my kind of whole view of this bit, was that knowledge that they aren't in a good place. As I said, I don't know if they'd actually split, but I would imagine they did. I mean, as I said, they got divorced in 1992 at some point, so it couldn't have been long after this, or may even have been before.